After my second supper with her family, Chris and I began seeing each other on a regular basis. Mostly our dates and hangs would be in either of our apartments, since Anya and Noika were still only 4 years old. We did try, once or twice, to enjoy meals in a restaurant as a family, but the little ones were bored beyond tears during these occasions. Not only that, when we were out, instead of focusing on each other, Chris and I would spend these dates attending to the needs of the children and keeping them from underfoot and out of the hair of others in these establishments. Since the twins were too young to attend school then, or to be left on their own alone, and neither she nor I had family living in the local vicinity, they were entirely our responsibility, which, all in all, I was pretty much fine with. As I fell further in love with Chris, I also was falling further in love with her little monsters. Her term for them, not mine. They were adorable. Although identical twins, and apparently joined at the hip in everything they did and said, by our third day I no longer had any difficulty in telling them apart. Anya was perhaps a quarter of an inch taller. She was bold, more direct, and the one most likely to initiate any activity the two engaged in. This little girl was also a dancer. Any time there was music playing, Anya just had to stop whatever she was doing to let its rhythm transport her into a world of expression through movement. That, of course, was one of the several complications we had during our attempted experiments with dining in public. She was also the more serious and no time for nonsense of the two. In fact, she was the epitome of an old soul locked in a young body, and of the two possessed a solemn air of gravitas. Noika, on the other hand, was the more easygoing and happy-go-lucky. But even though she wasn't quite as tall, and would normally acquiesce to any of her sister's suggested activities or demands, she wasn't a pushover. If this little carrot top really wanted something, she wouldn't force you to provide it for her. Oh no, she'd convince you that you wanted her to have it. Then she would willingly, benevolently, and happily assist you in achieving that endeavour. More times than not, it was Noika who had us wrapped round her little finger, and half the time we were unaware she was even doing it. Early on, I learned that Jan Wojciech had not only been a good man and husband, but that he'd also been a good provider. Like any good husband and father, he'd been covered by a hefty life insurance policy. At the time of his death, he had never missed a payment on that policy, so at least for the next 10 years or so after passing, his family would be well taken care of. He also had a great attorney. Jan's car had been broadsided by another driver who ran a stop sign, but who was also covered by a premium automobile insurance policy that had a sufficient amount of bells and whistles built into its coverage plan. In addition to what Chris and her daughters were receiving from his life insurance, they would also receive an amount almost equal to that as compensatory damage from the other driver's insurance company. During the brief court case, the prosecuting attorney had uncovered some unsavoury details about the driver that his insurance company's legal team had tried to hide. Thus, once Jan's lawyer revealed that revelation, the presiding judge hit both the driver at full and his insurers with some pretty hefty punitive fines. Being left a single mother after the accident, Chris had quit her job to raise the children. As it turns out, Chris did more than just speak, read and write in the Croatian language. She was also fluent in English, French, German, Italian, Romanian, Spanish, Portuguese, and had worked full-time at the United Nations as a translator. Without a second thought, she gave up a career that was on the path for stellar ascension to care for her babies. She could certainly afford to hire sitters, or even a full-time nanny, but was uncomfortable leaving her kids alone with anyone to look after them who was only doing it for the money. The one time we did go out together, while a babysitter with impeccable references watched over them, she was, to put it mildly, miserable. I lost count of the number of times she apologised and excused herself to check on things at home. I got it, so after our waiter had removed our untouched cocktails and appetiser plates, I asked for the cheque, paid it, and hailed a taxi cab to take us home. "Steve, I'm so sorry, but I just couldn't relax and enjoy myself being away from them tonight. I kept thinking of silly things, like if there was some kind of emergency where the sitter had to decide if she'd save herself or—" "Chris, don't. I felt the same way, and I'm glad we're just going back home." Anyway, who needs all that fancy-smancy restaurant food when we have you to cook for me and the girls? And in one of her rare displays of public affection, Chris kissed me harder than she ever had in the past, and mounted me momentarily in the back seat of that cab as the driver watched in his rear-view mirror. Now, while I wanted to ravish her just as much at that moment, we couldn't because of the lack of privacy. And that, you see, was the problem. As of yet, we've never had the time or privacy to fully consummate the physical side of our relationship. How could we, with two preciously precocious toddlers wandering around day and night, making surprise appearances when we least expected them? We would make out and share a few stolen caresses whenever we could, but each time we were interrupted by unexpected visits from the children, requests for drinks of water or escorts to the bathroom, or just the need for attention. I understood. That same night, after the failed restaurant meal and the temptatious taxi trip, while we were making out on her couch and I had my hands inside of Chris's blouse, we heard a tiny voice say, "Mummy, what is Steve doing to you?" "Oh, honey, I think a bug may have bitten me, so Steve's just checking if I'm all right," Chris responded to Noika as she pushed me away and hurriedly rebuttoned her top. "Steve, is Mummy going to be okay? Did you find any bug bites?" "A bump or two, but she'll be fine. I'll take care of her. Now let's get you back to bed so you can giddy up off to dreamland. Come on, I'll give you a horseback ride to your room, then sing you a song that'll put you to sleep." "But you don't have your guitar tonight," Noika pointed out as she climbed on my back to hitch a ride to sleepy time. "Well, I did bring my voice and a song in my heart, so do you think that'll be enough for this unplanned serenade?" "Okie dokie, Steve, that'll work." She felt no heavier than my guitar when carried in my soft shell shoulder bag. I really did love these little munchkins, despite the minor inconveniences they imposed upon our sex life. I understood if there was ever a woman worth waiting for, it was Svieta Chris Wojciech, and if necessary, I would wait for her until eternity ended. By the time I had her tucked in, Chris had joined us, and we were both sitting on Noika's bedside. Anya had awoken from the commotion, so I asked them if they were ready for their lullaby. The response was affirmative. Thus I began. "La la 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 la," I sang in an operatic triadic outline. "Wait a minute, is that supposed to be our lullaby?" "No, I'm just warming up. Here's the lullaby that I wrote for a cat who once adopted me and suffered from insomnia." "You had a cat? What was its name? And what's insomnia something?" "No, she adopted me. Her name was Kunta, and insomnia is when you can't sleep, just like you two little monsters." "Noika, we have insomnia." "Anya, Steve got adopted by a cat before we got him." "Kunta's a nice name. Now do you want me to sing to you, or do you want to play 20 questions? Sing, sing, sing Kunta's song." So I cleared my throat, sat up straight, and commenced to gently and very slowly sing a cappella "The Mouse of Your Dreams." "The mouse of your dreams is a very fine mouse, bigger than a breadcrumb, smaller than your house. The mouse of your dreams will lead you to sleep and into tomorrow through dreams that are sweet." Shh. I swear to God, and this is coming from a devout atheist, by the last line, both beautiful green-eyed tiny little girls had closed their eyes to go off on a platonic date with the Sandman. Chris led me from their bedroom by my hand and into her room and whispered, "You're spending the night here tonight." My, that was rather direct. Well, you strike me as the kind of man who wouldn't accept anything else than absolute directness. Touché. Chris then locked the bedroom door and made love to me more sweetly than I'd ever known love to be before. By the end of consummating what we'd both waited for so long, this goddess, the mother of the only 2 children I have ever wanted to love and care for, had not only satisfied my every desire, but had also delighted and surprised me. And although I would have thought it impossible, she made me fall more deeply in love with her and her daughters. Oh my God! I'd just been adopted by the family of my dreams.